All right, fellas. We heard from Sherrone Moore on Monday. Again, I think when you watch the replay of that game and then see, Sherrone's comments after the game, obviously you're happy for the win. You never apologize for a victory, but especially on the Fox post game, there was like a palpable sense of kind of being a bit, quite frankly, disgusted about the way that Michigan closed out that game. And now you barrel into a week where you're going on the road for the first time. And I think it's an interesting spot for them because when you go on the road, it tests your discipline. It tests your attention to detail. It tests your connectivity, all of those types of things. And I guess heading into this first road trip of the year, which in years past, it's been week 4. Last few years, I think it's week 5. This year, it's week 6. So kind of an interesting situation where you're almost a month and a half into the season and you haven't even left Ann Arbor yet. Before we get into Sherrone Moore, I guess just thoughts on this spot, and we'll do our research on Washington this week. But how do you feel about them in this spot this weekend?
This weekend, yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see Michigan go on the road here, coming off of a few straight wins. Still some meat on the bone, though. You feel like in all those games, the second halves have been an issue where Michigan just has not put together 60 full minutes of really good football and high-level execution, and really executing the way that they can. They executed really well in the first half against Minnesota, especially defense and special teams. They executed well in all phases in the first half against USC. They executed pretty well for a while in that game, really 3 quarters against Arkansas State until things went south. A lot of that was the reserves on defense, but they've got to figure out a way to play a full 60 minutes because you can't play a half or 3 quarters on the road when you're playing a team in a hostile environment that's trying to get some revenge on you from what happened on January 8th in Houston in the national championship game. So it's going to be a challenge. Jed Fish and Steve Belichick and all those guys out there, they're going to have their team ready. But I do feel like Michigan has a lot they can improve on from this game. At the same time, you should be happy about a win. I thought it was actually kind of surprising to see Sherrone Moore's interview after the game on Saturday with Fox and how disgusted he did look. But obviously that second half will leave a sour taste in your mouth. But he said he had a meeting today with Jay Harbaugh, who's now the special teams coordinator of the Seahawks, who's in town for the game against the Lions. And, Jay reminded him about, hey, you should have some joy here when you win a game. At the same time, understand you have some things to work on. And as Alex Orji said after the game, those are the best kind of wins. When you win, you still have things to work on. Obviously, you'd rather be dominant, but they were able to come out with a win, and that is absolutely crucial as you go forward here.
Yeah, and this is why if you look at Washington's schedule, and I just looked at this today, holy cow, is that a brutal schedule that they've got. Maybe somebody can call it up because that is this might be their second or third most winnable game on their slate. If you look at the way Michigan's playing right now, this is really kind of a must-win game for them after they went out and they played Rutgers and they moved the ball up and down the field a little bit, but they could not get the ball in the end zone. So it's going to be very interesting to see how they come out in this game because the crowd's going to be fantastic, right? For Michigan, I couldn't agree with you more, Clay, when it comes down to playing full games. We still haven't seen one from this team. And the way they played for the first 2.5 quarters of that game was unbelievable, right? We can talk about the 107 yards in the first half. They got 3 short fields and they took advantage of it, right? So, or at least 2, and made the most of their opportunity. They got points, I believe, on the first drive of the second half, right? It took 7 minutes off the clock, if I'm not mistaken, and kicked a field goal. So, and that's fine. But you cannot turn the damn ball over, number one. And number two, you better be prepared. You can't be giving up touchdowns like they were to a Minnesota team that was really not what you're going to be seeing offensively. So, and they got to hold some of them to field goals at times. So you're going to see some more tempo from teams. You asked my question today at the press conference, Clay, of Sherrone Moore about teams trying to get them with tempo. We're going to see more of that, in my opinion. So it's going to be very interesting. It could go either way on Saturday. I'm fascinated as a litmus test game to see what this team is made of.
Yeah, I think for me too, when you really take a step back and look at the totality of this season so far, and in all 4 games that they've played or in all 4 wins they've had, I should say, and maybe you could take the Fresno State game out of this too, but To a certain extent, you needed a pick six to kind of separate in that game. In all of these wins, the difference between closing out on a high note and kind of letting teams hang around until the very end has been the quarterback play. It's been one play here, a turnover there. I think something that's been a bit of an issue to this point is at the quarterback position, a bad play or a bad read gets made and the wind kind of falls out of their sails completely. And, that's on the quarterback position obviously, but I think the team response to that can be a little better too. Defense, again, they've been put in some tough spots at times. Think about that USC game, a couple short fields help them get back into that game. But, for everything we've seen thus far, I can kind of buy into the idea that they're not far away from maybe starting to hit their stride. But I think the thing that's going to keep lingering over this team is the fact that the most important position on the field, you're operating out of a deficit there. And it's incumbent upon everyone else to kind of pick it up. And I think the question right now is the multi-million-dollar question is that going to be too much for this team to overcome to get to 9 wins, 10 wins, or is it less than that? Again, you look at Washington's schedule. Yeah, you're going to get their best shot. They're at home. The rest of the way, they go to Iowa. They go to Indiana. They play USC. They go to Penn State. They play UCLA. They play Oregon. Like, if Washington doesn't win this game, you might be looking at only winning 1 or 2 more games the rest of the year at best. So you're going to get their best shot. It's a bit of national championship rematch in terms of the name on the front of the jersey and the helmets and all that. But these are 2 completely different teams, and I'm really interested in seeing how both of these coaching staffs get their team ready to play in this game. But the good news for Michigan, as we kind of segue into the quick hitters from Sherrone Moore's presser, injury-wise, it seems like good positive momentum for Josiah Stewart, Will Johnson, Samaj Morgan, Miles Hinton, Makari Page, all kind of seem like they're in play this week. Nothing seems long-term there. He did confirm that really the only long-term injury they're looking at the moment is Jaden McBurrows, which obviously there's been some reporting on that. Wes Walker working through something. Jaden Mangum working through something. A little thin in the secondary right now, but in terms of getting back some heavy hitters for this weekend, it does look like some reinforcements are on the way.
Yeah, which is great. You want to be healthy going out there for your first road game. There's still championship DNA on this team and guys that have been in those environments, especially on defense, that know what it takes to win games like that. And that's what makes me feel better about this one. You can't give up the big, stupid plays, the communication breakdowns on the secondary. We've seen too many of them now in the last couple of games. That if you do that, you're going to lose flat out because you don't have the offense to overcome it, especially on the road. That place is extremely loud. I remember listening to a game, guys, in the mid 80s, and it was coming through the radio. It was unbelievable. The transistor radio on AM radio. So, and I've heard great things about the environment there. So you will not be able to overcome that. At the same time, I feel good about this defense against this Washington offensive line. When I watched Washington, they look smaller. Again, they got beat up last year with the Joe Moore winning offensive line, and they don't have Michael Penix back there either. So that's what I feel good about going into this one. So I'm excited. I'm excited to go on the road. I love going on the road and covering a football team, but you just wonder what that swagger is going to be and how things are going to be when they face adversity, because you know it's coming. And do you go? If you need passing, because at some point they're going to be down in a game, right? And they're going to need to throw the ball to come back. Do you stick with Alex Orji or do you go with Davis Warren? I will not. People can get mad at me all they want to. I will say right now that I think Davis Warren is a better passer, and I think that he would give them a better chance in that scenario. So I think they are going to need both of these guys going forward. I really, really hope they get improvement from that position so this team can max out its potential.
The 2 biggest injuries for me last week was Will Johnson and Josiah Stewart, and they both happened to be like 2 of Michigan's best defenders against the pass. And, Minnesota was able to get some things going in that second half with their up-tempo offense, with the passing attack in general. I thought Max Brosmer did a good job once he settled in. But I think it would have been different, had Will Johnson and or Josiah Stewart been in the game. TJ Guy did a pretty good job, but Michigan was kind of rotating in. You saw, a lot of depth at the edge position, Dom Nichols and, Keyshawn Bennett. Shout out him for blocking the punt, but he was also in there on defense, something you hardly ever see. Cam Brandt played quite a bit. So if they can get those two guys back, like it sounds like they will, if Makari Page is fine after going down in the game, if Miles Hinton on the offensive side at left tackle can play again after leaving last week's game early, like I feel good about Michigan's chances to play pretty well, like kind of how they have in some of the better portions of these last few games, as they've kind of built an identity and bounced back defensively from what happened against Texas. But they're going to have to figure out the tempo. That's on film now. I mean, they've had flare-ups in that area defensively over the last 4 years, and they've kind of corrected them, throughout the season. So they'll have to have an answer. But sometimes when you kind of have this, the backup D line in to start a possession, and then, Minnesota sees that and just, all right, well, once we pick up some yards, let's just go up tempo here so Michigan can't sub. And then, finally, maybe they can get the big dogs in, Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, and those guys at some point. But Michigan's got to have a little bit better of a plan there. Sherrone Moore, said as well, the getting the call in quicker, making sure guys are lined up on time, before the snap. There were a couple times last week where some of the D linemen were standing up, before the snap. They got to figure that out because Jed Fish is going to take advantage if he can. But getting healthy is going to be big because they were missing. Michigan quickly and kind of quietly got pretty banged up like last week. And, having some of the guys back, Samaj Morgan, you mentioned too, Anthony, like it's going to be big for this team.
Yeah, and they get to the bye week and let's heal some guys up, right? So get through this game, man. You win this game, there's a lot of excitement still for the season, right? Especially if you get some of these guys back and healthy, and perfect time for the bye week, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, this bye, like if you can get I feel like getting a victory is almost like grabbing 2 wins because you get to the bye, you survive, you're 5-1, you have time to get a little healthy, you have time to maybe take a step back and reevaluate things, especially. Again, like I said, I think this quarterback thing is going to kind of linger over them all season long. And then you get to regroup and you get 2 weeks to prepare for an Illinois team that is good, but maybe not, Penn State kept them in check a couple weeks. Of course, you got to go to Illinois. You get a Michigan State team that, I guess is better, but I mean, they're going to talk about the Big Ten not doing you a solid. You get to host Ohio State, and 6 days later, you're on a flight out to Oregon to take on, another elite team there. So who knows what they're going to look like by then. October, really tough month for them. But to me, when you take a step back and look at what this team could be and what the objective is moving forward, get to your bye week, find a way to get to 7-1, and see how ready you are for November football, because that Oregon game, the Indiana game is going to be a dogfight. You got Northwestern in there, and there's another bye in there somewhere. And then you get to play Ohio State, which really will test how far you've developed as a team. So, like I said, overall, I think with where they're at right now, you're seeing some areas stabilize. You're seeing some areas get better. You're seeing a couple key areas just kind of be stagnant. But we often comment on the state of the team based on what we currently see without taking into account there's just so much more data that's going to come in here soon enough. And, the story of this season is still yet to be written. So other quick hitters from Sherrone Moore here said that they've altered their practice plan to make sure the passing game gets a chance to improve a little bit more. He said they made some kind of change before the USC game, and he was happy with how things went. Didn't say what that change was. We're not going to divulge what that change was, of course, but second half struggles have nothing to do with a speech needs to be had in the locker room. Just thinks guys need to execute and finish better. Keys to winning on the road: pack your defense and run game, play sound and discipline. He said that his team is excited to get out there and playing away games. You get to take all the distractions of playing at home, your family members flying in, all that. You're a little more secluded in your own cocoon. Some praise for the Washington defense. Brandon Hillman, praise for him as a guy that stood out as an athlete. I guess is there anything else that stood out about what Sherrone said on Monday? I think pretty meat and potatoes press conference from him.
Yeah, using 2 backs. He said they'd be doing more of that going forward. So I thought that was good. And you got to use your weapons, right, and put them in positions to succeed. So I think Donovan Edwards could have a big game out there against Washington. In fact, I'm counting on it. He might be my dark horse prediction for offensive player of the game next week, since I think I've nailed them both in back-to-back weeks here. We'll see. Stay tuned for the Thursday show. But that was about it for me. And they seemed confident. He said that the guys were coming in. They couldn't wait to get on the road. Guys, this is an exciting one. I'm excited to go out there with you guys, and it's going to be a great game, I think.